Well, good day to you. It is January the 18th. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I want to welcome you to my little corner of YouTube known as Search for Signs. And just say, if you are hearing these videos, whether it's for the first time or you've heard these videos before, I hope that you take it a step further and learn more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. Educate yourself better. Investigate it if that's the case. See if there's any truth to it. But if you already know this information, learn more about it, and it will help you, I think, to be able to relate this incredible story to other people by, reading Benjamin Creme's Masters articles, reading about the priorities, trying to, fit it in that kind of way. So that's why I put those links in the description portion of these videos to help, whether you heard this information before or you never heard this information in your life and you're just hearing it for the first time, to help kind of understand it better. So that's why I put it in there, because I do that very thing. I read this information and learn more about it. I read the articles from Benjamin Creme's Master, learn more about who and what Maitreya is, what he means for humanity in that way better than I can by going anywhere else. So I do also want to say, if you want to join the discussion, post comments, post your question in the comment section. I do try to address those questions in the next video. Sometimes I will address the comments. If you want to email me at searchforsigns@mail.com, you can do that. You can reach out to me through Facebook, and there have been people who have even taken time out of their day to share posts on Facebook, and I want to thank you so much for doing that. I do want to thank, is it Christian Worthrick? If I'm not pronouncing that, I do apologize. Danny Jella Hill, Zach Laney, Ricardo Pels-Wesley, and Larry Gammon for commenting since the last time I put a video up. But I will start with Larry's. What did Larry have to say? You're a real duck. Every time I read that, it just cracks me up. I'm sorry to laugh. Yes, I am a real duck, but I will tell you this. I was saved by Spell Correct. And truth be told, you're not the first person to call me a duck. Not realizing that the Spell Correct switched from one word to another. But thanks for the feedback, Larry. Anyway, Christian, what do you have to say? Thanks for sharing all your experiences. Listen to a few of them. I knew Benjamin Creme since 1982-83. He was a really big soul, and I had 2 direct experiences with Maitreya too, confirmed by Ben. Hoping that Maitreya can come forward publicly real soon. Well, thank you for the comment. He was a really big soul. And just like I've been telling people every time I talk about my own personal experiences, I am not the only one. There are a lot of other people who have had experiences from Maitreya, probably a lot of people who don't even realize they've had experiences from Maitreya. So I'm going to take a second and just mention this, because I have a tendency to skip over this, and I listen to these videos after recording. Why didn't I say that? But anyway, it's too late at that point. But I'm going to say it right now. If you go to the Share International site, you can get a lot of information about Maitreya for sure. You can read articles from Benjamin Creme's Master for sure. But one thing that I don't talk about is you can actually read experiences that people have had with Maitreya or these masters. And some of them are quite entertaining, funny, thought-provoking. You can learn a lot from them. I've learned, I've gotten my whole life out of some other people's experiences with Maitreya in that never happened to me. But I read what they said, they shared it, that kind of thing, and I'm like, wow, and I applied it to my life, and it was amazing, right? But it also could help trigger an experience or two that you might have had that you totally forgot about. There's a reason why you're interested in these videos, whether you're hearing it for the first time and the only time, or you've come back and listened to these videos before. There's a reason why this is intriguing to you, whether you like it or not, right? And one of the very real possibilities is you've already met Maitreya in your life. Now, the times that Christian and I met Maitreya and other people that I know who have met him, or any of these masters, they create a thought form known as a familiar. And it's a person, just as physical as you and I are, but like Maitreya was in London when I saw him, but he created this personality that he could communicate to me through this. It's not a person with a real life. It's a thought form that he created just for that one moment. And spoke to me and gave me his teaching, gave me a little bit of his love and his blessing in that way, and it changed my life. Now, the thing that I will say is, I started reading experiences that people had when I first heard about this information years ago, and it triggered memories that I had of experiences that I didn't even know that it was anything. Fortunately for Christian and I, we knew Ben, and we were able to ask him. And, now he's passed away. We can't ask him at this moment in time, but it might very well be an experience that you had with one of these masters. I put up a video from a gentleman named Dick Larson. He came up with all these little steps that you could think that he came up with that may help you recognize whether it was an experience from Maitreya or one of these masters. One of them is just you feel elated afterwards, or you can't stop thinking about that person, even if it was just somebody on the street just smiling and giving you a wave or something, or you turn around and they've totally disappeared. You have no idea what happened to them. There's like no corner that they could be hiding behind. It's just like they're gone, right? So those could be indications that they're a master. But if you read some of these stories from some of these people, you might, like I said, it might help trigger it. And the other thing too is, and this is just something that I think about from time to time. I don't think about it all the time, but if somebody such as myself can meet a thought form of Maitreya as a familiar, and he can communicate to me through that, it's just a tiny little fraction of his energy, of his love, of his wisdom, and it's changed my life. And I carry that experience with me moment to moment sometimes, and I learn from it and I grow from it, and it's growing inside of me moment to over and over, more and more every day, year, and that kind of thing. What's it going to be like when you really meet him in person? The master of all the masters, the one awaited by all the world's religions, this incredibly humble man, but yet every single one of his cells is love. He truly embodies the love nature of God. That's what makes him the Christ. What is it going to be like when any one of us stand in the presence of him and see and feel his energy in that way? The closest thing that I can imagine, Benjamin Creme was talking about it, that it was at the time that he first met Maitreya, and Maitreya appeared to him like this vision kind of thing. And Maitreya at that time asked him if he would play a role in helping get the information out that he's coming back and that kind of thing, which he, of course, agreed to do. But Benjamin Creme said at that time, Maitreya gave him this experience of what time really is like, how the masters see time as past, present, and future all happening at once, and not as this linear thing. And he said he saw into the future. And this, when he said this, I cannot get this out of my mind. But he said he saw people running down the street crying after hearing Maitreya for the first time because they realized that their life actually mattered. Quite an extraordinary thing to think about. But anyway, so thank you very much for telling me that, Christian. Now, I want to swing to something that Ricardo Pels-Wesley commented, not in this video, the last video, but the video before that. He said, one aspect of our evolving being is to spiritualize matter from the lower to the higher. All forms are in a state of transition, seeking a greater expression of the divine plan, of which we are intrinsically part of. But he a light unto others, as the light of the soul shall emerge from within, radiating love supernatural? I don't know. Thank you very much for your comment. I'll put a little heart next to that there, Ricardo. I appreciate it. Now, I do want to talk about this in a couple different ways. Okay, so first of all, when you read the Ageless Wisdom Teachings like Alice Bailey, they talk about that very thing, because that's the truth. We are spiritualizing matter. But what I wanted to say in terms of this, just because most of us are hearing this information for the first time, right? How can you apply that to your life? I mean, is it really practical to go around thinking, I'm spiritualizing matter right at this moment in time? Now, I know that's not what you're saying, Ricardo, but so don't get me wrong. It's just, I wanted to kind of maybe possibly take some of Maitreya's teachings and apply to kind of what you're saying, but in a practical way, if you don't mind. Okay, so Maitreya says, the self alone matters. That's all that it is that really matters. He calls it the absolute reality. And the way that I see it is we have this thing called consciousness, but there's this other thing around it that allows it to exist. Like the Apostle Paul said when he was talking about God, he said, the one in whom we live and move and have our being. That's who he was referring to, the absolute self, the absolute reality, that kind of thing, the absolute, or the self, excuse me. So, if you look at physically, right, this is a good way of kind of trying to intellectualize it, I guess, which isn't doing it justice, but just indulge me for a second. You have a house, right? And it's a nice house. You got it decorated the way that you want, but it's just a house. It's not you, right? You live in the house, right? But that's not who you really are. If you were outside the house, hopefully, and there was a tornado and the house was just leveled and all that was left was just a bunch of scrap wood, metal, and junk, right? And it was just this big pile or whatever. Well, the house is gone, right? It doesn't look the way it used to look. But what happened to the space that allowed that house to even to be built before, right? Nothing. Nothing has happened to that space. It's still there. We all share that self. There isn't any person, no matter how bad they are, that isn't living within the self. You know what I'm saying? As Maitreya says, if you steal, think of it as the only reason why you can steal is because of the self. Right? There's something to that effect. But to put it in practical terms, he says, and this is really his core teaching about self-realization, is he says it takes honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. But these are just words unless you apply it. Right now, Maitreya says that, we all think one thing, say something else, and do something entirely different. We need what we think and what we say and what we do to all line up. It's easy to see it in other people when they're not doing that. When they're thinking one thing, we don't know what they're thinking, but when they're saying one thing and doing something different, right? More than likely they're thinking something totally different too, right? It's very easy to see that in them, but it's much more difficult to see it in ourselves, of course, right? But you can't realize the self when you're kind of all over the place in this. So it has to line up in that way. I guess in a word, it would be integrity or true integrity if you wanted to use two words, right? But honesty of mind is crucial. The second thing is sincerity of spirit. Now, what is that? Now, Maitreya used two examples to kind of help us paint a picture for ourselves of what that is. But he said that it's like you're sitting on a beach and you're watching the sun go down, and it's just a beautiful moment for yourself. And you forget all about your bank account, your investments, what they're doing. You forget perhaps all about your family problems or your work problems, and you're just there in the moment watching the sun go down. And you lose all track of time. That is an example of sincerity of spirit. If you can't get to a beach, perhaps, sitting on a sofa talking with a loved one or a friend, and you're just having a heart-to-heart conversation with them. You're talking, they're listening, they're talking, you're listening, and you just let the time go, and you don't realize how long you've been talking, but it's just been a wonderful conversation about whatever. That's another example of sincerity of spirit, according to Maitreya. I would also say, when you're being creative, whether it's artistically or some other way, right? And you lose track of time in that way, that is another form of sincerity of spirit. Or even service, same thing. You forget all about your troubles, you forget all about yourself at that moment, and you're serving. That's sincerity of spirit too. It can really happen through service. The commonality is you lose track of time. That's funny. It's like, sitting on a beach, talking with a friend, serving or being creative, you lose track of time. And that's when you just feel the moment, right? Well, that's one way of, sincerity of spirit, I guess. And then the last one is detachment. Now, this is difficult only because it takes courage to do, and objectivity. You have to be objective in thinking about, what am I identifying as? Am I identifying with really who and what I am? Well, according to Maitreya, anything you think of, anything you identify with isn't you, because you can't identify with yourself. You can't really see your face unless you look in the mirror, right? It's kind of the same deal. Or when you're looking in the mirror, is that your face or is that just a reflection of your face, right? But anything that you identify with is not who you are. And some of the things that we identify with them so closely, so, just we're white knuckling, holding on to it, that to think that it is not you is scary. That's what the courage is, As Krishnamurti would say, you have to be very diligent moment to moment with your identification. You have to be very aware of what you're identifying with. And Maitreya would say, if you are, let's say, angry or sad or depressed, rather than asking, why am I depressed? A better question would be, who is depressed? And then just let it be. Don't try to fix or remedy the situation. Just to let it be there and keep asking yourself, who is feeling this? well, then you start to realize it's not really who you are. You're just feeling the feeling. And then what happens is when you're in the process of this, you start to feel like there's somebody watching behind you. He said that's the self, or around you in that way. That's the self, you see. But if you want to know more about honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, I would suggest listening to Krishnamurti videos. And I think I have a link in the description portion of these videos. I can't check it right this second, but I'm pretty sure I do. That takes you to the Krishnamurti channel, and you can listen to him talk about a lot of different things, and there's people that ask him questions and so forth. And as far as I remember, he's never used those words, honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, but that's what he's talking about. And he's a perfect example of that, because Maitreya actually himself said that he is a perfect example of those things, you know. So you can really get a real sense of what is honesty of mind? What is it, you know, from someone? That's how he lived his life, you know. Sincerity of spirit in the same way, detachment in the same way. You know, you can really get a good sense from Krishnamurti. And if Jesus had been alive today, well, he's a master now, but had he been alive today in Palestine, or there had been recordings of Jesus in Palestine, we would have gotten the same sense from him, because he was living the same principles: honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. Same thing with the Buddha. And the teachings of Jesus are very, very simple, basic, entry-level teachings into self-realization. You know, because he was talking about oneness in that way. He was talking about the law of cause and effect in that way, because this has a lot to do with it too. But anyway, those are just, you know, one aspect of what I wanted to talk about. The other thing has to do with the actual evolution of consciousness, of what you're referring to. And scientists and you know, think about the origins of life in terms of evolution, right? And the religious folk think about it in terms of creationism. They can't see eye to eye. It's one of the parts of sort of cleavage, you know, so to speak. You got two diversions of thinking. Now, according to the masters, they both have it right and they both have it wrong, actually. The scientist doesn't really look at the consciousness evolving within the form. They only look at the form evolving. And then the religious people believe there's a creation to all this, but they think it just happened and then that's it. You know what I mean? So they both got it right, they both got it wrong. Now, there is an evolution to consciousness from the lowest to the highest, and nothing in the universe is stagnant. And you can try to keep it still, but it will never work. You know, as they said in the movie Jurassic Park, life will find a way. Life will find a way. It'll break forth, right? But if you look at the kingdoms that we all know and agree upon right this moment in time, the mineral, plant, or vegetable kingdom, animal kingdom, and human kingdom, right? The scientists, and even probably the religious folk to some degree, agree that those are the kingdoms that we got. That's it, right? There's nothing else. Well, according to the masters, there's kingdoms above that. The direct one above it is the one that I refer to, the Masters of Wisdom, or the Kingdom of Souls, or the Kingdom of Heaven, as it was referred to in the Bible. Society of Illumined Minds, the Lords of Compassion, the Hierarchy of Masters, whatever you want to call it. That's, you know, same group of, you know, group in the same kingdom. But that's the kingdom directly above humanity that we're unconsciously all moving toward. It takes lifetimes upon lifetimes and lifetimes to get there, but we are all moving toward that. These masters are coming back to teach us how to demonstrate more of who we are as souls, create a civilization that supports that make it easier for us to move into that kingdom. But if you were to go back to the very beginning, the foundation, which is the mineral kingdom, we see it as inert. We don't see it as a life form, but it is a life. Everything in life is life. Everything in life, in the cosmos is life, right? I guess a better way to say it. Now, each part of life is not on the same level. So, looking at the mineral kingdom, what would be the most advanced of all minerals? You know, if you were to ask a New Agey person, they would probably pull out one of the crystals they have in their pocket, right, and say, "This is the most evolved of all minerals." Well, it's not actually. You don't want this in your pocket. It's radioactive material, right? Plutonium or uranium, for example, would be, you know, they're becoming radioactive, and over millions of eons, those minerals will eventually move into the plant and vegetable kingdom. And the plant and vegetable kingdom feed off of the mineral kingdom. That's what they owe their bodies to, is the mineral kingdom. That's why they have the roots and those kind of things. And as a plant evolves over millions upon millions of eons too, it eventually becomes floral, emits a scent, and a color and those kind of things. And those vegetables and plants are higher evolved than the plants that can't do that. And then if you look, but those floral plants are transitioning into the the animal kingdom. And so the animal kingdom feeds off of the plant kingdom, and that's how they get their bodies, is they feed off of that, and then the carnivores feed off of them and so forth. It's the circle of life, as they said in The Lion King, right? But there are different levels of consciousness even among the animal kingdom. So what would be the highest evolved of all animals? Would it be the primates and the dolphins? Well, according to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, they are not the most evolved of all animals. It's the animals that respond to human thought. Domesticated animals, cats, horses, dogs, oxen even, which don't seem very bright, but apparently they they respond to human thought too, camels and elephants, from what I remember. And they are moving eventually, after millions upon millions of eons, into the human kingdom. And the human kingdom, from the lowest to the highest, of course, you can see, how we live our life is really where we're at. So a person who's totally engrossed in their own instincts and physical desires, like a early animal man or a caveman or something like this, is not nearly as evolved as somebody like Jesus was, or Martin Luther King, or Leonardo da Vinci, or Abraham Lincoln, or Mozart. They couldn't do what they did, right? Because those individuals were moving into the next kingdom of the masters of wisdom, or the kingdom of souls and those kind of things. They're moving into that kingdom. And as they start to move into that kingdom, they start to radiate more light. So that's why the influence of the work that they're doing, the more light that they have, the more influence they have on their time and after they're gone. So you look at somebody like Leonardo da Vinci, very advanced painter, very advanced Renaissance man of his time. When he painted the Mona Lisa, he was nearly a master. If you know anything about that painting, which I'm sure you do, because it's hands down the most famous painting in the world, not very exciting to look at, not very attractive. It's not very colorful or exciting. It's very simple. But yet more people throughout the years have traveled the longest distances to see that one painting. Why? Because it was painted by someone that was nearly a master. There's spiritual light emanating from it. In fact, every one of the Renaissance painters are now masters, and you can feel, if you're sensitive to energy, you can feel the energies coming off those paintings in that way. Ben talked about it a lot in his book, Maitreya's Mission, Volume 3. He talked about the different types of Renaissance painters in that way. But there's a reason why somebody like Jesus could talk very simply 2,000 years ago, and we still know about Jesus. We still learn from what he had to say. It's because of the light of the words that he said. He wasn't saying anything quite extraordinary in terms of the actual words. It was just the light behind the words that made it happen like that. And then if we were to look at the masters, someone who just became a master, from our point of view, they have no faults. They are true divine manifestations of their own soul, perfectly. Love unconditionally, know nothing but joy and creativity and oneness and those kind of things. But from the master's point of view, they're just starting. And one of these masters, Joao talked about the difference between an entry-level master, which at the time that he wrote this, he was nearly an entry-level master. Okay, so this is where this is coming from. And the person who's known as the Lord of the World, or Sanat Kumara, who's one of the 7 Kumaras of our solar system. There's only 7 of them that are able to be in the solar system. His consciousness is so advanced. The difference between his consciousness and somebody like the Master Joao when he wrote the Alice Bailey books, is the difference between somebody who's a caveman and somebody who's a master. That's how far their consciousness difference is. So you would think, if you don't know what the consciousness of a master would be, it would be somebody who's above somebody like Leonardo da Vinci, or somebody like Jesus when Jesus was in Palestine. Now, they're both masters now, but when they were who they were that we know, historical figures that we knew, they weren't masters yet. So imagine a caveman versus somebody like them. I mean, you can't compare the two. And I'm sure there are beings above the 7 Kumaras in the solar system. It's the same thing. Life never stops. It just keeps moving and moving and moving. Jesus once said, greater things than this shall you do yourself. That's what he was referring to, the evolution of the human spirit, the human, the human soul and those kind of things. And I'll leave you with this. We don't really know what the soul is yet. Most of us maybe intellectualize if we probably heard about it, but we don't really know exactly what it is. According to the masters, it will be discovered scientifically in a lab in France in the not so distant future. They will prove in a lab that can be duplicated in other laboratories the existence of the human soul. It will revolutionize the way we see life on planet Earth. And it really will be the start of what Maitreya said. The greatest change and achievement, I think is how he put it, over the next 3,000 years will be the hearts and minds of humanity. And it will start with us realizing that we are souls, that we are one, that we are divine, those kind of things. So thank you so much for the comment, Ricardo. It gave me a chance to really kind of wax intellectual and all this stuff. I love you guys. You take care. I look forward to putting up other videos in the future. Stay safe out there.
Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.